What is the worst performance that you are going to turn in, regardless of conditions, regardless of readiness, regardless of anything? Your wife left you, your dog died, your house got ripped up by a f***ing tornado, and you haven't eaten or slept in 3 weeks. What can you do for me then? What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today I want to talk about bad training days. We all have them, right? It's an inevitability. Not every session is going to be a banger. It's just the way it is. Progress is not linear. There are upticks and there are downticks in performance for basically an infinite number of reasons, ranging from the physiological to the psychological to the just plain idiopathic. There's life, there's stress, there's work, there's kids, there's spouses, shitty sleep, nutritional lapses, hydrational lapses, motivational lapses, focus goes awry, hormones fluctuate, everything. There's a million possible reasons, and they can all be distilled down to one simple idea. Shit happens, and sometimes your training is going to be shitty because of it. It is what it is, and it happens to all of us. Every single one of us, without a single exception. And we all have to figure out how to deal with it. And I am reminded, personally, I'm reminded of things like this in the midst of my own shitty training sessions. Because in the moment, when my training is going shitty, I tend to get pretty annoyed by it and pretty pissed off about it, to be honest. And whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't know. But it's something that I have spent a lot of time doing, training and trying to improve myself and get stronger. And so it's easy when you have a bad day, it's easy to get sucked into the headspace of, well, what was it all for? Why have I been doing all this? Why have I been spending my time and all this effort in the gym? And have I just been wasting my time doing this whole thing? It took me years to build all of this, and seemingly it has been erased overnight. But then I reflect for just a few minutes, and usually I can come to my senses pretty quickly, because when I look at things objectively, when I've had a chance to reflect, even for just a brief moment, and I'll look at the training session that I'm in, and I'll still be annoyed by it because I can't lift the prescribed weights that day, or run the expected times, or jump the expected heights, or whatever. And it sucks, and it's demotivating in the moment. But what I try to do to try to shake it off and move past it, I try to give myself a reality check. And I'm just gonna do a quick story time for you guys so that I can explain what I mean by that. So I was running a training block last year, 2020, on the push press, and I kicked things off in that block by hitting a set of 215 pounds for 5 reps. It was just a feeler session on the exercise, because just to kind of see where things were, because I hadn't push pressed in a while. But I had an inkling at the time that I was pretty much ready to put some big weights overhead, and I wanted to try to work up to them. So I got to work. I did 215 for 5 in my first session, and that was a 5 RM right there at that time. I would not have been good for even 220 that day. I can promise you that. If I tried to do 220 for 5, I would have missed it. I would have gotten maybe 3 or 4. But so then, week by week, I start pushing it, right? Week by week. And I hit a string of rep PRs on the exercise. I got 220 for a set of 5, 225 for a set of 5 that was even better, 230 for 5 that was even better than that, 235 for 5, and then I go all the way up to 240 pounds for a strong set of 5 reps for a lifetime PR on the exercise, as well as the rest of those rep PRs before, all lifetime PRs. And then after that, I tripled 245 for a PR. Then I tripled 250 for a PR, and then I tripled 255 pounds for a massive PR after that. So it was a great training block overall, and I am very, very happy with it. And that's the last time that I've push pressed. It's been about a year now, and I'm going to get back to it soon. But I distinctly remember that somewhere along the way, during that fantastic training cycle last year, I had a bad day, a really bad day. Multiple bad days, in fact, over the course of that training block. But at one point, I distinctly remember, I was out of town and I was training in a commercial gym, just trying to get in a session, doing what I could, right? Being on the road and all that. And I worked my way up and I hit 225 pounds for what was, in retrospect, based on the video here, this is the exact set that I'm talking about, objectively a pretty clean and solid set of 5 reps. Now, I racked the bar, and I know that that is as high as I'm going that day. There's nothing more there, and I'm a little annoyed by it at the time, because going into the session, I wanted to go for 245 pounds or something like that. I don't quite remember what the exact number was, but it was heavier than this. But going any heavier here was not going to be beneficial that day, and I knew that. But so afterwards, you have to reflect on that though, because in the moment, all I can see is where I wanted to go, what I had hoped to achieve that particular day. And by not achieving it that particular day, the day itself feels like it was a failure. But the fact of the matter is, it was anything but a failure, because I had hit a solid set of 5 reps with 225 pounds on a pretty suboptimal day in unfamiliar conditions on unfamiliar equipment. But a couple months prior to this set, 225 pounds represented a weight that I had never even done for 5 reps ever on my own equipment or in my own gym or anything like that. And now it's kind of the minimum threshold that I'm capable of hitting on a bad day with unfamiliar equipment in unfamiliar conditions in an unfamiliar gym. And so that's kind of really what you need to see the next time that you have a bad day in the gym. You need to see how far you have come, not where you want to go. There's a time and there's a place for that, but this isn't it. This is the time and the place for reflecting on how far that you have already come, for looking at what you've already achieved and being able to gain some semblance of satisfaction from that in the moment. You don't have to be wholly satisfied, but you do have to derive some level of satisfaction from it, because doing that is motivating, right? And it makes you feel good about yourself, and it helps you to remember why you're doing all of this in the first place. And that's kind of an important thing, because if you can't find any of those things, if it's always just negativity in your head regarding your own accomplishments or chronic dissatisfaction with where you are in spite of how far you've come, then why are you even doing this in the first place? Because what really is the point? Now, here's a philosophical question for you. Would you rather be the best in the world at whatever it is you do? Whatever. I don't care what your endeavor is, but best in the world, whatever it is. But at the same time, you have to be completely dissatisfied and unhappy with your existence every single day of your life. No one can touch you. No one can match you. You are the fucking best there is, hands down, and no one questions it. And history will remember you. But the hole in your soul is so gaping that no matter how good you are still empty inside. Would you rather be that, or would you rather be perfectly average? You don't suck. You're kind of good, actually. You're, aight. But plenty of random dudes on the street can beat your ass at your own game. Plenty of dudes that you pass by on the street every damn day. But you don't care about that, because you remember where you started, and you remember how far you have come. And from that, you're able to be satisfied with who you are and find yourself a general sense of happiness. So which would you prefer? I'm genuinely asking. You guys let me know in the comments. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. Ultimately, it's a matter of personal preference. I know which one I would choose, and you can probably figure that out as well from the context of this video, but I don't believe that everyone will make the same choice as me. But so my point is, you have to find some kind of satisfaction from this whole game, right? You have to be able to find some kind of happiness, some kind of satisfaction on a visceral level. Otherwise, why are you really doing this? What would possibly be the point? If it doesn't make you happy or give you satisfaction of some level, on some level, in some capacity, then you're essentially actually just torturing yourself, right? And along with that, you need to find a way to overcome and move past the shitty training days, both mentally, psychologically, as well as physically. And one way that you can do that is by very deliberately focusing on and remembering just how far that you've come. Something that represents a shitty effort today may very well have represented a super maximal effort for you just a few months prior, right? And that's an important thing to remember, especially when you're feeling down on yourself. And for me, this whole thing kind of harkens back to a term that I stumbled across recently from the work of a performance coach that I've been reading lately. And it's funny because I've had the idea for this video, this specific video, in my head for over a year now. I haven't done a push press, which was the inspiration for this video, since mid-2020, but it was back in February of 2020 2020, before the damn pandemic even started, when I had the shitty training day that I showed you in this video earlier, and the exact concept for this video of making your bad days better kind of popped into my head. And I just sat on it for over a year because honestly, I felt like the concept was maybe a little bit too hokey. But then I read this article the other day, and that coach I mentioned was talking about a concept that he called raising the floor. And I was like, oh, well, shit, that sounds kind of familiar. And it kind of inspired me to finally make this video because in my opinion, the floor, the training floor, is much more important than the training ceiling. Right? That may sound counterintuitive, but we're also focused on the peak. What is the best that we can do? And the more advanced that you get, the less of those peaks that you're going to see. The harder that it is to find the ceiling, even just within a damn training session. But ask any elite lifter working up to a max squat attempt how much work goes into that hour, just that hour of finding the ceiling, finding the best squat they can get, and just getting there. Not even breaking through it, but just touching it. But the ceiling is for competition, right? Transiently pushing past it, transiently elevating the ceiling, that's for competition. And you could argue that that metric is actually meaningless for people who are just training to be badass at life, because the ceiling is fleeting. The peak is fleeting. It's really hard to stay there. It's risky to stay there. And ultimately, it is somewhat meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but much more meaningful than your best effort under the best conditions is your worst effort. What is your floor? What is the worst performance that you are going to turn in regardless of conditions, regardless of readiness, regardless of anything? Your wife left you, your dog died, your house got ripped up by a fucking tornado, and you haven't eaten or slept in 3 weeks. What can you do for me then? That should be the goal of your training. Raising the floor, making your bad days better, increasing the minimum threshold that your body is capable of achieving under any circumstances. And obviously I'm not going to tell you to simulate or try to simulate, and please don't try to simulate all those negative life events that I just mentioned, but the point remains that by shifting your mindset like this, like I was talking about earlier, you'll kind of start to see more and more the value in slowing things down with your training, slowing things down and taking a long-term and a more wide scope perspective on your training and on your fitness, which today, for me personally, that is really what it all boils down to. And that's one thing that I think if you ask any of my clients, I'm kind of always preaching to all of them as well. Patience is a virtue in this game. It needs to be something that you're willing to genuinely invest in the long term for. It's not a short term kind of thing. And one day or 1 month or even 1 year doesn't really make or break anything because it's all bigger than that. And by focusing more so on building up your general everyday capacities, by training in such a way as to focus on raising the floor rather than constantly trying to push the ceiling, by training in this way, ultimately, I think that you are going to see better results on both sides in the long run. And I think that you're going to be a lot less beat up and a lot more well-rounded by the time that you get there. Anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. I hope this one made sense to you. It was a little bit ranty, but still, I hope it made sense to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I hope that you were able to take something useful away from it. But yeah, please remember to smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and definitely leave me some love in the comments down below. All that good stuff. And if you're interested in online coaching or training programs, be sure to visit my website, www.enkirielitefitness.com, for more details. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.